So I had a very strong addiction to social media, in specific Twitter. I probably still have that addiction, but that's not the video for today. And I was trying to figure out a way to basically, remove that from my life because I was spending like 10 hours plus on Twitter every day. I was still spending some time on other social media apps like TikTok and Instagram, but I spent a lot of time on Twitter. So I made the decision to basically cut off and delete all social media apps on my phone, right? And decided that because of my addiction to Twitter, it would be impossible to remove Twitter completely from my life. So I decided to switch to using Twitter only on the web version. But I discovered one problem. Twitter for web was missing one very crucial feature that made Twitter fun for me and most people, which is the ability to view public quotes tweets. They hid it or they basically removed it, which I don't know, was weird to me. So I'm going to show you what that looked like or where it used to be. So if you've used Twitter web before, you'd know that there's just so much engagement that happens in the quotes. And when you don't have that, you basically miss a lot of context and a lot of interesting convos. For instance, previously when you clicked on this button, you would basically see a view quotes, button alongside this. But Twitter has hidden or removed them. I have no idea where they are basically. So it was so inconvenient for me and so annoying that I could not basically use this feature that I was already used to. So because of this experience, I decided to build a Chrome extension that solved this problem for myself in as little time as possible, and I call this extension Quick Quotes. So in this video, I'm going to be revealing how I built Quick Quotes, my process for building as fast as possible, the obstacles I faced while building this, and I'm also going to walk you through the code to show you exactly how you can do the same. So the first thing I did was to list out my personal requirements for Quick Quotes. Part of what I wanted was I wanted to make sure that Quick Quotes was consistent with Twitter's current design, majorly because I didn't want it to look out of place. Most extensions would just, have their custom icons that just look so weird and, to me anyways, ruins the Twitter experience. So I just wanted it to be consistent, to look as if Twitter designed it as a feature. I wanted to make sure it was extremely simple and shows quotes in a single click, obvious. I also wanted to make sure it did not, reload the page at all, which turned out to be slightly harder than expected, but I'm going to talk about this later when we look at the code. So this is not my first rodeo building Chrome extensions. I've published a couple Chrome extensions on the Chrome Web Store already, like a privacy-focused inbox decluttering tool for Gmail, AI email writing for Gmail, movie ratings and reviews for Netflix. So what is my secret tech stack for building Chrome extensions? Drumroll, it's not React, not Vue, plain old JavaScript, basically. A short answer for why is because I try to keep my extensions as small as possible. By that I mean the size of the extension, basically. Also, there are cases where you could, in theory, prefer to use React and Vue to build Chrome extensions, but in my opinion, for most cases, plain old JavaScript will do the job very, very, very well, especially if you can obviously write plain old JavaScript, which I guess a lot of people might not be able to. So my whys for using, plain old JavaScript is the fact that I know how to write plain old JavaScript pretty well. I don't want to over-engineer, certain solutions, especially if I know I can build it with simple JavaScript. And maybe I'm just lazy, I don't know. But yeah, I'm actually building a new extension that's going to be using React this time. I'm going to explain why in probably a future video, but plain old JavaScript was what I chose for Quick Quotes as well. So Quick Quotes does not have any authentication any backend, is a really plain and simple app. So using plain old JavaScript makes even more sense in this scenario. So I'm going to walk you through the high level goal of quick quotes. So on a high level, the goal is to add a custom icon somewhere here for quick quotes that once clicked will basically open all the quotes that belongs to this tweet, basically all the quoted tweets for this particular tweet. And just to show you from a high level how this looks like manually, right? There are different ways you could actually view quotes today manually. So you could select this tweet, for instance. This is the ID of the tweet. I'm just going to copy the ID and you put that in the search bar. Then you type URL search. This basically searches all interaction related to this particular tweet, which would usually include the quotes, as you can see. So in theory, this actually would work fine for, I guess, people that don't view quotes a lot. For me, it's definitely not going to work because I'm going to always have to, get the ID, then do this, get the ID, then do this. It's, hell. Also, I actually found another way that looked slightly, let's say, easier, but it's still manual, which is you basically go to a tweet like this and you have slash quotes. So this will actually bring up actual quotes, right? Only quotes, which is similar to the search anyways, but it's like, I don't know, you might consider this faster, but for me it's definitely needs to be automated. So the goal is simply, as mentioned, to provide an icon somewhere here, basically. That way we can view quotes instantly in a single click. So let's get to the sweet part. Let's look at the code. Here's what the code looks like. If you've built Chrome extensions before, most of this is maybe familiar with you, but I'm just going to quickly go through a few introductions of what a Chrome extension really consists of. So usually you would have like a manifest.json file, which is mainly a configuration file for your Chrome extension, where you can define the name, the description, version, and several other bits. I think probably the most important bit for quick quotes is the content script and how the content script work. So once you define a match for your content script, you can basically inject JavaScript, in this case a JavaScript file, to that page. So what I'm doing here is basically injecting a JavaScript file into Twitter's home page, Twitter's page, basically. That way I can manipulate the DOM and basically add our custom icon for quick quotes. So that's why this is probably the most important bit for quick quotes. In a more complex extension, you're probably going to have to request for permissions for certain things, like let's say you deal with tabs, let's say you deal with storage and several other bits. Also, you could have like a service worker that does more background level work, but for this video is mainly content script we're going to be looking at. So going to the script, we have the app.js file. So as you can see, very minimal. There's hardly any code. So if you remember from what I showed you on the UI, is we simply just want to put our icon on each tweet in theory, and once the user selects the icon, we want to show the user quoted tweets, basically. So the first bit I'm going to show you is this, which is an event listener for the load event on the Twitter page. So once we get that event, we have a mutation observer, an observer specifically for the document body, basically. So for every change in the document body, we would basically do certain actions. And in this case, the action we are doing is to query all articles. I'm going to show you why that is. So this is why we are starting to query all articles. It's because based on what we've seen from Twitter's code or source code, we can see that each tweet is basically an article. So let's see how I can find that real quickly. I'm just going to select this section. Exactly. So I hope you can see this clearly. All this. So yeah, this, as you can see, is an article. So each tweet on Twitter today is an article. So in the code, we query all articles to get all tweets, basically, in order to get the tweet information. So once we've queried the article, we iterate over the article using for each, and we set the quoted tweets icon on each article, which is the goal, basically. Article is the tweet, basically. So if I go into this function, let's see what that looks like. So the first thing we do is we check if the article, anytime I mention article, just assume it's the tweet I'm talking about, but it's the article HTML tag anyways. So we check if this article or the article has our custom identifier, which is quoted tweets container. That means that we've already attached an icon to this particular article, so we should basically skip, which is what this return does. So we query the class and we see, oh, quote tweets container exists, so return. So if there is a separate article that comes from this iteration that does not have quote tweets container, it will continue running. And the next line here, we query bookmark. So the reason why we query bookmark is we have an intention to put the icon right beside bookmark. I'm going to show you what that is. So if you look closely, this is the bookmark icon on Twitter. So I'm just going to go directly to that. So ideally, we want to put our quoted icon, a quick quotes icon, basically here, just right beside this bit. And bookmark is this. I'm just going to click that again to find what we're looking for. So if you look at this element, it has a data test ID bookmark. The reason why I've decided to use the test ID bookmark is I'm making an assumption that this will less likely change compared to like the classes, because these are like classes that have been minified or obfuscated, basically. So it's difficult to trust that the classes won't change. So in order to target this bookmark, I've decided to use the data test ID. So a lot of Chrome extension work is about basically looking at the DOM, looking at the code, and seeing how you can basically manipulate things in your favor. So in this case, I find the bookmark. So once I can find the bookmark, I can proceed to add the quick quotes icon right beside the bookmark. So this bit is basically me setting up the quick quotes icon. So I created a div and basically an SVG, which is for the icon. I'm going to show you where I find SVGs. So you can find really cool SVGs at svgrepo.com. So like I said, I was looking for something really close to Twitter. So they have a lot of really cool ones. And I just selected one of them basically. So I wanted something slightly plain, just like we have on the Twitter, Twitter app. As you can see, most of these are plain icons. So let's go to the actual magic or the actual source of the Chrome extension, which is once we click the icon, we want to open view quotes. Basically, we want to view quotes. So my initial implementation was actually to simulate, a Twitter search, which actually worked eventually, but I had a problem with basically the experience it didn't feel right, basically. I'm going to show you why. So using this tweet as an example, I'm just going to show you what I automated basically. So what happens is the extension, once you click it, will basically paste the URL and the ID in search and basically, press enter. So basically simulate a user session in theory. So which works to an extent, right? I don't know, my internet is slow. But basically which works to an extent and is fine. So the problem I had there was, whilst this is fine, for certain tweets you could see random things that have nothing to do with the quoted tweets, like explore communities and some other random bits. Which is, I mean, it's fine if you're actually searching, but when you're not searching, you just want to view quote tweets, it's not as convenient. Which is why I chose the other option to basically figure out a way to basically change the URL without without reloading, which was part of my requirement. As you can see, I have to reload, which might be fine for people that have, I guess, good internet. Sometimes it can be quite slow to reload. I don't know, it's not a fantastic experience for me. So my preferred experience was for the quotes to show without reloading the page. So I'm going to show you how I made that work. So I added an event listener for once the icon is clicked. So before I show you the actual implementation to view quote tweets, I'm going to show you how I got tweet ID and tweet handle. So go into get tweet details. So I made an assumption that I might not be able to always get the tweet handle. So the major reason I needed the tweet handle was for the eventual implementation of view quoted tweets, which I will go into later. So basically, I have a default Twitter handle. I have a Twitter ID to set as null. So the first thing I did was to try to get the handle. In this case, similar to how I got the bookmarks, I decided to, look at the HTML and figure out how I can get username attributes and get the actual, which is the second div or the second child div basically under data test ID username. I'll show you what that looks like in the HTML. So I'm just going to inspect elements again for this guy. So if you check, if you look at this tweet, right, for instance, where do you think we could get the handle? Sort of obvious here. So you just, click that. So this, in theory, could have been an option. I could have just, looked for a span under a div that has data test ID username, as you can see here, actually, which would actually work, I suspect. I'm not sure if it works. But yeah, as you can see, it's a lot of trial and error of trying to manipulate the DOM, trying to fetch elements, trying to distort elements on a page. That's pretty much what at least 80 to 90% of most Chrome extensions actually do. So this is the handle I needed, which is, I believe, the only text, right? Yes. So it's the only text in the second div of the second child div of this particular div, which is referenced here in the code basically. So once we get that, we just get the text content that matches the handle. So once we find a match, we set Twitter handle to that match. So to get the tweet ID, we basically use similar techniques, which is we look at the HTML page to figure out how can we query the ID. So looking at this tweet again, where do we think we can possibly get the ID? I mean, there are several ways you could search for it. Me, this is the ID I really need. And in this scenario, it will work fine for this in cases whereby the tweet is, up like this. But when we have when we have tweets like this, we do not have the ID. So we have to, make sure it works for both scenarios. So we can't just say we get the ID from the URL and ignore this scenario. So the way I personally did it was, which is probably the lazy way or the fast way, is I go to the actual tweet, I copy the ID, then I go back, right? Then I search for, I just search for it on the console. So as you can see, the exact ID I need is clearly here. And if you see the format for the ID, you could probably see why I cared about getting maybe the Twitter handle, even though in theory I did not need it. So I'm just going to paste the URL here for it to make some form of sense. So this is what we need, right? Which is the ID. So I create a selector that basically gets an A tag that has an href containing the handle, as you can see, which is this, right? As long as the handle is not default handle, because definitely it's never have the default handle, which is just a fake handle that I had here. Then, but if I was able to get the handle, in this case, let's say this handle, that's what will show up here, and also has status. So this star here means contains, meaning it doesn't have to be exact. If I wanted to be exact, I'd have to do something like this. Obviously, I can't make it exact because I genuinely do not know the tweet ID, which is what I'm trying to get. So once I can get the A tag, which is the tweet anchor here, I can basically get the href. I split the href by this slash, meaning this will come back as an array of href paths. So what happens in this line here is I'm trying to get this, and this ID, which means I'm trying to get whichever element is after status. I'm trying to get it. So this is why this is done this way. In theory, I could have probably done a hrefs href paths.pop, which will get the last element, which will be accurate for this. But I actually found there are some scenarios where we have stuffs like slash photos, popping up. So we just want to always get the one after status. We know it's always going to be the ID. So if that makes sense, let's go to the next bit. So once we've gotten the ID and the Twitter handle, we basically go back to this bit, which is to view quoted tweets. This is when we implement the actual view quoted tweets. This is the part that actually gave me tough time, because I was trying to make sure we don't have to reload the page, which before now anyways for me was I didn't have the technical knowledge to know the know-how basically of how could I navigate a page without reloading. How can I navigate a page without reloading, basically? As you can see, it's really simple. It looks ridiculously simple and obvious, but at the time it was not obvious for me. So what was my solution to this? So my solution to this was, as a result of me finding out that Twitter was using React, basically, which front-end framework. So they have like some form of PWA, SPA implementation. So in the sense that when you route to, different parts of the app, as you can see, there is no reload happening, if that makes any sense. So things are happening without like reloads, but the URL is changing. So this means they have like some internal router. So based off my guess that they have an internal router, the goal was to change the route and hope that whatever internal router they are using is listening to an event. And in this case, that event turns out to be the pop state event. So with this in mind, all I had to do was construct the new part and replace whatever current state of the URL is with a new part and dispatch the pop state event. Then this bit is just to scroll to the top. Simple as ABC. I have to tell you that this bit, even though it's like 4 lines, this probably took me the most time in the 2 hours time frame, because as you can assume, the other parts are like pretty easy. But to figure out just exactly how, I can basically force Twitter or Twitter's implementation of routing to, change the state, which means without reloading. If I was going to reload, if I did something like windows.location.href equals to, the path or the full, Twitter URL, this would actually still work, but it would not satisfy my requirement of not reloading the page. So time to see the results of the extensions implementation. As you can see, we have a new icon placed right next to the bookmark icon and basically placed on all tweets. So with this, with just a click, I should be able to view quoted tweets without, refreshing, reloading. Once you just click on this, you see, we navigate to the quote tweets. As you can see, the handle, the tweet ID, all came and all smooth. And life is better again with Twitter, basically. So let's see if I was able to satisfy my requirements for quick quotes. So must be consistent with Twitter's current design. I would say it is, if I do say so myself. Must be extremely simple and show quotes in one single click. I believe it does, right? Must not reload the page. It does not reload the page, so right. So I give myself 100 over 100. So as you can see, building Chrome extensions can be really simple and straightforward to get started with. But obviously, there are some complex extensions you might want to build in future that would have way more complexity than what I've showed you today. But like I said, once you are more fixated on solving problems, solving the right problems and building the right solutions to solve those problems, you can basically learn anything on the go. Most extensions are more fixated on manipulating the DOM or making changes to the DOM or scraping the DOM or getting information from the DOM or presenting information conveniently to you in your browser. So there are several Chrome extensions that you can check out in the Chrome Web Store just to get an idea of what type of Chrome extensions you could build. So my key takeaways for shipping Chrome extensions fast is list out the requirements for the main feature. Once you list out, requirements, especially for the one main feature, it's easier to start building. Because if you list out a lot of features, you're just not going to build anything. So you need a single purpose main feature to start with. You can always add on that later. Come up with high level solution for implementing this feature. So think about it from a manual standpoint. How would you manually do something? You know, how would you manually solve this problem? Or how are people solving this problem manually? Or how do I intend to write code that automates this bit of the work, basically? So once you come up with a high level solution, it makes implementing really fast. Make sure to choose a stack you're familiar with. In my case, I chose JavaScript. Like I said, I'm actually building new extensions that are going to be built on React for different reasons. But in this case, it was a very simple extension, so it makes no sense to overcomplicate the process. Make it simple. If you are not familiar with plain old JavaScript, you can use whatever you're familiar with. In truth, you can build Chrome extensions with pretty much any JavaScript framework. All you need to do is just indicate that file in your manifest file, that JavaScript file in your manifest file, and you're good to go. Also, the most important is to set a tight deadline when you're building. If you do not set a tight deadline, you're just going to keep building and keep building and keep building. Work expands based on the time you set for it. So if you set 1 week for something, right, there's a very high chance that you just be moving sluggish in everything, maybe in the planning process, in the designing phase, in the implementing phase, because you feel like you have a lot of time. So give yourself good time to complete features, but at the same time make sure it's tight so that you can focus on ship as fast as possible. So that's exactly how I built a Chrome extension for Twitter in less than 2 hours. We've covered everything from the development process to walkthrough of the code and tackling how I was able to implement a solution to solve a very strong problem, which is the missing Twitter feature to view quote tweets. So if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up and drop comments below. It will motivate me to keep making content like this. Thanks for watching and see you next time.